agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as usually, I thank everyone for coming out tonight, even though it is dark early now. Appreciate your presence here tonight. First thing, or second thing on the agenda is public comments. These are public comments that have nothing to do with the public hearing, which is item number 4, A and B. So if there's anyone here wishing to speak about anything other than public hearings, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and I'm going to limit you to 5 minutes. Okay, that was easy. Seeing no one, I'm going to go ahead and close that part of the meeting and go to agenda item number 3, approval of Planning Commission's minutes for September 30th, 2024. I take it, Commissioners, you've looked at the minutes. Any
Yes, sir.
changes?
No, sir. I have none.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Okay, so tonight we're going to move on to the public hearing. We have 2 items. Item A, which is a rezoning, and item B, which is a conditional use permit. And I'll go through these really quickly. The first item is rezoning requested by David L. Dove and Katie P. Dove. They are the property owners, and the town of Christiansburg, who is the applicant, to rezone the property located at 255 Simmons Road Northeast, identified as all of tax parcels 500-A-1A, parcel approximately 14.1 acres and approximately 4.6 acres, 0.46 acres, parcel identified as tax parcel 499-14-A B, parcel ID 19655, from agricultural district A to general industrial district I2. Property is designated as multifamily residence on the future land use map of the Christiansburg Comprehensive Plan. I'm going to go ahead and read B as well, and I'm going to open up the public hearing to both items since they both relate to the same issue. So B is a request for a conditional use permit, again requested by the same property owners, and the applicant is Town of Christiansburg, to allow for public work facilities and operations, including the commercial garage and sanitation vehicle storage in the general industrial district I-2 on the property located at 255 Simmons Road Northeast. As I read in the beginning, same parcels, same IDs. So at this point, staff, can I ask you to give a little overview before we open it up to the public?
Give your summary.
Town manager Randy Wingfield, and we're of course interested in purchasing the property. The property is, I guess, formerly currently right now the Dove Farm. So there's a single family residence on the property. There's about, I guess, about 14.5 acres there total. The single family residence sits towards the front of the property there on Simmons Road. You have, I guess, an industrial zoning across the street there in the form of Corning. You have residential zoning behind it in the form of R2 zoning. Also over against it there to the south. To the north, the adjoining property is agriculture. You have, of course, this property is agriculture, and you've got some B3 zoning there to the southwest. I guess obviously the town, as I stated, has been growing, and that's part of the reason we're looking at purchasing this property. Right now we maintain Public Works Complex on Scattergood Drive. That property is limited in size and topography, and also it's in the 100-year floodplain, and it does flood on occasions, and we've had issues at that location through the years. We do operate a little bit, we have, I guess, some storage in the current row furniture building. We have, I guess, a little bit of equipment storage and miscellaneous storage there, although, of course, we plan on demolishing that building eventually with the connector route. Also, we have a little bit of public works storage on Wade's Lane. We've got snow spreaders, things like that stored there on Wade's Lane, and a little bit of material storage. We would like to try to consolidate that to this site, although we would still maintain some of that on the Scattergood Drive property. For example, it might be nice to have the salt dome on two sides of town, and maybe some material storage on both sides of town. But we would make this our primary operations center. The size did help attract us to it. We have a drawing, it's concept drawing, and as we had stated in the packet, we are willing to make proffers in regards to this. We can do that right up to the point of the Kent Town Council public hearing. So, like I say, we would be willing to do that. A few things that, three suggested proffers. One would be that it be in substantial conformance with this concept drawing. The concept drawing shows a double row of staggered evergreens surrounding the property. The drawing shows a double row of evergreens staggered along the property lines of the perimeter against the residential zoning, with the exception of, I guess, the agriculture to the property to the north. We aren't planting them adjacent to what we're proposing as the stormwater area. And that is actually because of the slope in that area. There's a bit of a drop off there. Also, we're proposing a fence. You see the blue line on basically that this is the administrative building. So it basically extend from the administrative building across the front of the property, across the north against the DeVore property, and all the way against the adjoining residential properties to this point. This area would be open to general public parking, also, I guess, employee parking. We'd have also some employee parking inside this area. We'd have, like I say, administrative building, workshop area, fleet area, wash bay, a salt dome, future expansion, equipment storage area here, basically sheds, and truck sheds here. Like I say, stormwater management here to the north. I know it's an industrial zoning that we're proposing, and I can see that that would cause some alarm to the neighborhood. I'll state this: I think the town of Christiansburg can be a good neighbor. That's why we're proposing the row of trees and the fencing. We don't normally operate around the clock, even though we are around the clock operations, yes, but we aren't sending large equipment out around the clock. We normally do that during snow removal operations. If we have a major water break, I'm not going to say we wouldn't send out a backhoe or something like that, but normally, typical to send out a utility truck. Our Public Works Director here, Jim Lesney, is here too, if there's any questions in regards to our operations. I've got drawings, be glad, you had it in the packet, be glad, got paper copies if anybody on the Planning Commission wants them, or the public will be glad to print more. And like I said, I'd be glad to take any questions you might have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. At this time, I'll open it up to the public, and since we have so many people here tonight, I am going to limit you to 5 minutes. And if you are repeating yourselves, let's hold it down to if someone covers one issue, let's make sure we don't cover it 3 and 4 times. Okay, anyone wishing to speak? And state your name and your address, please.
Yes, my name is John Charlo. I live at 250 Teal Street, which is the longer on the right there of the picture. I'm here on behalf of myself and my family and 45 residences along Hames, Teal, and the Simmons, and I think it's Simpsons on the top where the water tower is. We all right now are suffering enough with everything that's going on. If you don't know, adding an industrial zone to a residential, right next to a residential zone, is going to immediately knock the value of our property down 30%. It's going to either stagnate it or it's going to drop it immediately from the time you say you're going to do it. Didn't have enough time, only had 2 weeks of this, so I couldn't put my house up for sale. That's what I'm worried about. Okay, that's my money, that's my home that I've invested in. Same thing with everybody else that's here. Even if they're renters, it significantly costs money for a renter to start looking for another place to rent because they don't want something like this in their backyard. This comes from the real estate finance and economics, that whenever an industrial zone is near a residential zone, this is what you will entail. Is the values by as much as 30% can stagnate or drop your values. The other problem we have with this is the EPA on their own website posts that an industrial zone near a residential area poses environmental harm, health risks through air, soil, and water pollution. That's light pollution as well. We don't have this right now. We have backyards that we can go and play in our backyards with our kids. We can have fire pits going. We could barbecue, and we don't have to smell garbage. We don't have to smell diesel. We don't have to smell exhaust. And we don't have football stadium lights in our backyard. The other problem that comes with manipulating this agriculture property is what's got to be done to build, and that's bringing in equipment to alter the way the property already is, the way it drains. And as right now it drains, we have flooding at the bottom of Teal Street through people's property that the town is going to have to deal with. You know, it's just, there's no way you can't. And a retention pond is not going to solve that problem. There's a creek that runs through the DeVore property and the border of this property that's up for this, the 255, that even with the retention pond, you're going to run into a problem with the runoff into that pond and into the people that live on Teal Street's yard and possibly even over the road to Teal Street. Per the town council's future use comprehensive plan, which you already stated, in 2013, it was in the best interest of this town for that to be residential. We're going against that because the town wants to put their facility there. If it was my business, same type of business that the town has, same landscape and whatever, same equipment, and I came in here to do the same thing, we all know that the town, along with the planning, is going to go with the future planning. And I would not get that zoning changed, and I would not put my business there. This isn't right for our community. It isn't right for our neighborhood. I walked the streets and talked to all the neighbors I could get a hold of. There's approximately 48 to 50 people that live in the neighborhood that surrounds this area. And I have a petition signed by 45 people in that neighborhood area that does not want this to happen, and some of them are here tonight. The town owns 2 more properties on Scattergood. It's not ideal to this, I understand, and they're not being used. If maybe a little bit of storage, maybe some dumpsters. But if you take those 3 pieces of property and you add them up, that's 12.5 acres just about. This is 14.5 acres just about, let's say. We're paying $1.6 million for 2 acres. When you can put that money into where they're at, you can raise that flood zone up. It's done all the time, and you can utilize those 2 acres. That's pretty much what I have. I don't think this is good for our town, and I don't think it's good for our neighborhood. I do have this petition I'd like to give to you. If I can.
Sure. Absolutely.
The first 3 is a letter of petition, and they're signed by individuals that weren't able to sign
Duncan. I find it a challenge in pulling off of Haynes onto Simmons already to make an exit. As a matter of fact, within the last 3 or 4 months, I've had 2 close encounters pulling out, and that's going to be complicated X number of times by vehicles going to that facility that you're speaking of constructing. There's the restaurant right there. It's going to impede traffic from the restaurant, well, the whole thing. That's my comment.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Yeah, my name's Robert Mitchell, and I own property at 240 and 240 Teal Street. I'm not going to take a bunch of time here. I would just like to see the planning commission follow the guidance of the comprehensive plan and recommend that the town council to deny the zoning request, because the comprehensive plan is our guidance for the area. I own a duplex at that location. Owned it for going on 23 years, and I'm on my 4th tenant on each unit. People like the area. It's a nice neighborhood. It's got a great location. And when the comprehensive plan was last revised, and it's showing residential there, it's a perfect residential area for people who need to commute, get where they need to go. And they don't make any more property. Yeah, I just seem to think it's a shame to burn that property on a yard when it's affecting so many people in the neighborhood next to it. I could see if somebody wanted to build a neighborhood next to an industrial park, those people would have the option of whether they wanted to live next to the mess or not. As property owners on Teal Street, we're at y'all's mercy as far as what we have to live with in the future. So I'm hoping that you follow the comprehensive plan and recommend the town council deny it. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak? Again, state your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Princess Belcher. I live at 220 Till Street. I have 4 girls, and I don't think it's fair that we would have to have that in our backyard due to the fact of, like you said, pollution and stuff. Not only that, what does that do for the taxes? Do our taxes rise or anything on our homes that we have to pay due to the fact that we're beside that? It's really hard for us now as far as homeowners. We just, I just bought my home. I don't feel like I have to sell it or move it, or like I have a garden in my backyard. I just don't feel like that should be by our stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak?
My name is Russell Crockett. I live at 350 Teal Street. On the map there, if you see, if you might got the pointer. Can I borrow your pointer a minute? It's kind of hard to tell you from this, I guess. And if I can turn it on, there we go. I live right here. I've got 12 building lots, 50 foot wide. They come up to right about there, more or less. This drain ditch, for the last 30-some years, I've asked the town, I've asked the town managers, I've asked the engineers, assistant engineers, do something about that, because my driveway, right there where you come across the road, it's got 3 16-inch tubes in it. And if I'd have thought, I'd have brought you a picture of what that looks like during a heavy rain. It's full, it's waist deep. I'd say it's a good 8 feet wide. I do have one picture at my driveway where one year it was almost up over those tubes. I can't even get the tubes packed back in. It's eroding under those tubes, just with what water we've had. You take and do what you're going to do right here, I'm going to be flooded out. We went through this a couple years ago with this DeVore property when they had that 9-point-something acres. They wanted to put 60-some units on that street or two. And again, I reiterated, you take all that green off of it, trees off of it, that ditch line will not hold it. It would flood me out. And the engineer said, well, we'll just put us a little. retention pond, that's bull. It ain't gonna hold it. I'm telling you, if you want, I'll send the pictures over to show you just how bad that is. I wish that water could have gone back the way it used to go down that hollow, but I have to live with it. It comes out that ditch line, up my property line, goes under the road, if somewhere about in there, and then goes back behind those trailers in the industrial park. That's the most idiotic thing I've ever seen. And it gets stopped up. I've had to get the town to come out with a backhoe where it goes under the road, wherever that approximation is right in there, and ask them, can you just reach in there and get those limbs and sticks and twigs and stuff? We can't do that because that's on someone else's property. Well, sit in the road and reach and grab it, which they did one year, and I really appreciate that. But I'm at the lowest point in there. You take all that stuff off of here, put asphalt, concrete, metal buildings, there's no way that's going to hold that. That pond, it won't do it. So that's the biggest thing I've got against it. It's going to flood me out, yeah. Everybody's property value is going to suffer. Hubble's over here. We have a constant breeze, sometimes a pretty good breeze, blowing off that, coming off that field. You put the stuff in there that you're proposing. We got rat problems, we got insect problems, we got all kinds of problems. And that smell, like everybody so far said, you're gonna have it. I don't wanna live in that. I've lived there 33 years or so, since '91, and I'm a good resident. I don't bother anybody. I go, my ditch line, when I've fought with the town over this, not really fight, but argue about it, those drain tubes, I'm out there Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock, in the cold, driving rain, with my pitchfork to keep them clean. I've been promised, oh, we'll take care of that. We'll be sure somebody, the best they do is drive by and look at it and drive on. I'm emptying those leaves and sticks and twigs. If you don't believe it, come by and look up on the bank sometime where I've picked them up for them to pick up. Yeah, I'm a little aggravated with that. Again, I have a list. I don't know if I've covered everything. Yeah, I talked about the rats, insects, the smell. Our property values will go down, but I doubt that our taxes will follow. I'll still be paying town and county taxes like I always have been. New buildings, trucks, etc. I've got internet access that goes from my house right there, shoots back across that way. Now, it may not interfere with that, but it could. If you put that line of pine trees all the way around like you're talking about, it's going to knock me out. I've got to find another source to do that. And I guess maybe this is not the place to ask who's paying for the land or who's paying for rezoning, because I've heard it by rumor mill that the town's paying for that and the rezoning, which I don't think is an adequate thing to use my tax money to pay somebody else's rezoning. And other things I could go into, but I won't. I don't have solid proof of that. Anyway, that's my biggest gripe is you're going to flood me out. And you've almost done it a few times before. And I'm open for questions if you want to ask me anything.
Well, we might, a little bit
Okay.
later on.
Come by and look. I'd like to say, I've had Mr. Nelson, his associate, and I don't know if we call him an associate. They walked this whole ditch line all the way through, all the way over, back and around. Nothing ever became that. Never happened.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak?
So my name is Gwen Moore. I'm a resident of 2186 Hamas Street. I believe that's how you pronounce it. We just moved in, and this is also my first town hall related thing ever, so sorry if I'm a little bit not put together. I also have a little bit of overlap, but I hope y'all can forgive me. I typed up some points here that I wanted to mention. First thing, I don't believe that proper communication for this plan changed was sufficiently given. Letters went out to homeowners only, despite this being much more of an issue for residents specifically. Owners are not. There was a single sign announcing the change at the very end of the plot on Simmons, the road with only 1 or 2 occupied homes to actually see that sign. Renters are members of the community just like homeowners, and I believe we have a right to know what is happening in our backyards without having to learn from a third party. And when I say backyards, I do mean very literally. This parcel is what we see when we look out the window, sit on our porch, walk our dogs, play with our children, etc. In our specific house on Hamas, the separation is a single wire fence, and I don't know if that small row of trees will be enough to not subject us to noise, smells from garbage trucks, smogs, dust, etc. That would be an issue not just during construction, but after as well, thanks to the proximity. There'll also no doubt be a higher risk of machine pollutants seeping into the residential area, a risk. Not to say that it will happen, but a lot of people don't like that risk. As well as possible danger from heavy vehicle traffic. We don't really want to rely on truck drivers' due diligence to determine if our neighborhood streets are safe or not, with them going back and forth. We're also already completely surrounded by industry and deserve at least a small oasis of peace. It may not seem like a very important piece of land, but it is to us. Not only will it be unpleasant for the residents, but it will pave over one of the remaining havens for beneficial birds and insects in the area. I know nature's kind of like a hippie thing to worry about nowadays, but I do believe that nature is a right for everybody, and disrupting the availability any further will make Hamas and Teal that much more unpleasant to live in. A study by Dr. Rick Oxfield and colleagues in 2003 for the Society of Conservation of Biology shows that when beneficial animals are pushed out, the resilient parasites such as ticks and mites move in higher numbers. Overdevelopment and pesticide spraying are two of the largest contributing factors to the boom in tick populations and also tick-borne disease in the United States in the last few years. Overall, I don't really think this decision is being made in the residents' best interest. Like it was stated, it goes against the 2013 comprehensive plan that was stated to be in the benefit of Christiansburg residents. But I don't feel as if we, the residents of Hamas and Teal, are being taken into account here. I understand that we are a relatively small neighborhood, but we still deserve peace and consideration. It feels like our small neighborhood has become an obstacle to the area's expansive industrialization as opposed to beneficiaries of it. I also don't think that, considering all of these downsides, it would be a good idea to have our tax money going towards the purchase of that land and the development of that land at such an inflated price when we are already opposed to it. So that's all I had. I do have a copy of my points if y'all would like to keep it just to view over it.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak?
My name's Rick Clemens. I live on 340 Teal Street. I have a few minor things to talk. One of them is here, we have a pump station on the Teal Street side for our sewage. We have problems with it constantly. You're gonna put a wash bay over here that's gonna wash trucks. I wash trucks for a living for years. All that stuff runs down the drains and does nothing but create a mess. If you don't do something with the drainage system, we're all gonna be paid for it on our side. That's what scares me the most. And you're also gonna have probably a fuel aisle and everything else on this property. You know, something goes crazy, we're gonna pay for it. And I don't like that idea. I've been around the trucking industry. I work for Freightliner, I work for Detroit Diesel, and I know what happens. It creates a mess for the neighbors. And I realize that's not your problem, but it's mine. So I appreciate, I'm against it. Now, there's 50 or 60 deer a year that are killed in that field when they mow it as it is. Babies that'll lay down in that field and won't get up until they run over them with a mower. And I'll miss the thoughts of seeing them every year. It's a great place to live. It's peaceful and calm, and that's why I moved here. I don't want to have to wake up every night to some truck coming rolling out of that place. You know, they make enough noise as it is. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay, anyone else wishing to speak? We're gonna make sure that everyone else gets their comments in first.
Good evening. My name is Roger Thomas. I have a residence at 2200 Hames. The reason I wanted to speak is if this rezoning is approved, I would like to make a recommendation that all of the construction vehicles not be allowed to use Hames as a thoroughfare to get to Simmons. Those of you that are familiar with Hames, it's pretty much a straight stretch. There's a lot of speeding on there anyway. We have a lot of residents that walk their children, their pets, their dogs, and so forth. We also have school buses that come through there. And occasionally we have tractor trailers that come from Sheeler, and they come down Teal, realize they maybe need to turn around, so they turn around on Hames. So anyway, and there are two primary ways to get to Simmons as far as what I can see. Of course, one is directly off of Roanoke Street, directly on to Simmons. And the other one, I think, is Hubble Drive, which will take you right in to Simmons. So anyway, I would appreciate your consideration for that if this does go through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Eric Leadham. I live at 260 Teal Street, and I'm not going to belabor a number of these points, although I may touch on a few of them again just to reemphasize my particular and general interest in this. But I think one point that's been mentioned briefly, but it will affect us very directly, is that we have a well, and I can only imagine the garbage that's going to be in our groundwater if this occurs. There's no way to mitigate that, no matter what is told or said. That will be coming into our sink and our shower, and it's obviously not something we want to be bathing in. I'm a renter, and I can tell you very honestly, I will leave if this happens. No doubt in my mind. As a renter, maybe I carry a little less weight, but I do think I'm a good indicator of the value of the property, and I can tell you definitively that there is a huge, well, this kind of combines into my next point. There's a national and local housing crisis. There's far too little housing, and certainly the housing that's available is either overpriced or unpleasant. And I think we're taking reasonable, semi-affordable, decent housing and potentially turning it into something that is going to be unsalubrious and a health issue for the residents. There's no way that diesel fuel, diesel fumes, and as I said, the groundwater issue is not going to affect us at all, and I will leave. And I think it's a shame. I know this might not be very popular with some of the other people who are my compatriots in this conversation, but to me, if this land needs to be developed, use it for housing. The country needs it, the locals need it, we need it. Use this for housing. Hopefully reasonable housing, hopefully not highly dense. That would make sense. I can understand that. That was previously suggested, and I think there was a good reason for that. I think it's an excellent point that if a random developer came in and proposed putting a bunch of tarmac and washing trucks and running diesel engines all night, it would be roundly rejected, and nobody would even consider it. The residents who are paying taxes and should be, I think, the primary concern here, are not going to care whether this is city transportation or city work or a local mechanic. It doesn't make any difference, and certainly doesn't make any difference to my and my wife's health if we're drinking the exhaust and pollutants. And I think that's been it, or that's pretty much it for me. Sorry, it's a bit slapdash because I wanted to sort of fill in some holes that I think were generally covered but not emphasized enough. The one last point I would like to ask, or at least make, is what other sites have been considered? If there is this serious concern and the current sites don't work, where are the other proposals? And why was this done? I reiterate, I live here. I didn't get any of this. Maybe my landlord did. He doesn't live locally. I don't know. He certainly didn't know about it when I mentioned it to him, or through our property management agent. They didn't know about it. So I don't think it's reasonable for, as somebody earlier said very eloquently, the people who are actually going to be affected this not being notified. Having said that, even if they are notified, I think they should be able to, we should be able to view other proposals and determine as a community what makes sense. And I genuinely believe that this is a very much less than ideal location for this development. It's a nice place to live. I would enjoy, or I would at least concede, additional people being able to live here and enjoying the area. But the idea of it being turned into an industrial zone certainly would force me to reconsider. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? So I'm gonna allow you 1 minute.
No, sir, we have it.
You got it, okay. On the map up there, I was talking about the flooding, see that top corner of the field, how light it is? It's almost tan. When we get those hard rains, I've got pictures of that makes a pond right there in its own, when that ditch is full. And in addition, if I could step over and talk about this, not only does it pond down there, but on my property, which is, I think it ends right about here, this water comes across and whatever they put in the field is, and it goes right through, and when it gets to that ditch, it cannot drain, it just ponds up in my yard. I've got water on 3 sides of my house. So again, I'm not up for that because it won't do it. And as Mr. Clemens mentioned, the pump station is old. It's done its job, but when they did the 9-acre thing, I think that might have been what stopped that, because the town would have to pay too much to do a new pump station. And the next question, and I'll quit here, when that DeVore property sold last weekend, there's gonna be some houses and so on built up there. They're gonna need some sewage and maybe some runoff too, so that just adds to the problem in my opinion, and I think that's all I got.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, anyone else? I'm gonna allow you 1 minute.
And we also deal with a lot of noise already from Sheelers, because their property is right in front of Till Street. And then their cars go up and down the street, and they don't end their services till about 8 o'clock, and you hear them over the speaker all hours of the night. So I don't just think it's fair for us to have to endure more noise. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Randy.
Randy Winfield again. Just want to, I guess, point out, as mentioned, I guess, earlier, these properties on Till Street join either industrial now or B3 currently. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, that it's industrial over on the other side of Till Street. And also, as was mentioned, the property is scheduled as residential in the future land use map. Of course, the comprehensive plan is being updated now by Planning Commission, and we'd respectfully ask that you consider to reschedule that as industrial in the future land use map. In regards to access through Hames Street, we would not plan to use Hames Street for access. We would simply use Simmons Road, because that's basically a straight shot for us. If you look long term at signalization on the street, Simmons Road and Industrial Drive would probably be the two most likely to be signalized in the future. And like I say, that's where we would plan to use our access. In regards to the garbage trucks, we do tip those at Montgomery Regional Solid Waste Authority before we bring them back to the facility. So we should typically be bringing those back clean, more or less clean. I'm not going to say there's not garbage residue. If we do miss a stop, we might pick it up on the way, but we'd still crush it. But like I say, typically there wouldn't be garbage stored in the facility. And in regards to the drainage wash system, we have one of those at our current facility. And one thing I do want to say is, long-term, the property is not going to stay agricultural. I know I heard that you'd like to see it remain fields and area for deer. realistically, that's not gonna happen. Doves are looking to sell the property one way or the other. If the town doesn't buy it, then I don't have a doubt eventually a developer will buy it and propose another, another use. I don't doubt residential would be proposed at some point in the future too. But I just want to point out, I don't think it's realistic for it to stay agriculture. In regards to signage, the reason we did not post signage on Teal Street is the property doesn't adjoin Teal Street. If we posted it on Teal Street, we'd actually be posting it in front of somebody else's property, so. That's really all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Okay. Anyone else? Have you spoken already, sir?
I have, all I need is a minute.
All right, I'll allow it, and then that's it.
So in regards to the signage that you were talking about, the only signage that was ever put out was all the way at the entrance of Corning down the bottom of the hill of Simmons. There was nothing in front of the house, which is one of the tax parcels, if I'm not mistaken, correct? No signage there whatsoever of anything going on. I was a homeowner, so I did get a letter because I was right on the property. And according to the, trying to think of the other thing that I was thinking about that he brought up, the garbage. I'm a truck driver. I'm around trucks all the time. You can dump that garbage all you want, unless you wash it out with soap and water at where you're at, it's gonna stink. Okay? That's all I got to say.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and close this part of the public hearing and open it up to the commissioners for a discussion point. And I wish you guys would stay around because I'm sure we'll have some questions for you. So,
Randy,
over to you,
Randy,
commissioners.
I would like to get a copy of that. Mail it. Thank you.
Okay, while we're doing that, commissioners, comments?
If it,
Questions?
everything that's on here.
Yes, it's
Okay,
on.
thank you.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I've got it, appreciate it.
Thank you, Randy.
Yes, the tree line and the fence is gonna take care of some of what has been discussed. But I also wanted to ask, either Randy or, Jim Lansanese, if they have any other plans for that, water problem that exists in that whole area.
The pump station, is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm talking
flooding,
about.
the drainage?
The drainage and what they have in mind for that. So if,
The stormwater pond area should, I believe the stormwater area that we're proposing should basically retain everything in accordance with state regulations. If anything, it should probably help the situation. Because if, like I say, basically we are allowed to increase runoff from the property under Virginia regulations.
The water stand in the pond all the time?
Well, it would, I guess that's really up to engineering design.
I've had, if I may, I've had groundwater come from that field all the way to my house, right, pointed out all the way to that corner. We make that lake, one, it's floated lumber, I've had to stack 3 or 4 feet over the yard, I've had to restack twice. And then I've got a garage with a concrete, driveway going down and a rock wall, it seeps through that wall. And I some pumps take care of that, but it's hard to pump it out when the ditch is full.
Generally, they are all typically designed to release.
I heard that last go round. Green space.
my understanding also is that there's going to be some leveling on the property, taking some of that, the hills and some of the other drainage problems out.
There, I would call it, I guess, light grading on the property. I wouldn't say it'd be major grading on the property. Sure.
Yeah, please, come on up to the podium, so.
Is there a topo or anything that we can see on your slides? We're talking about drainage? I do not think
I reside at 300 Scattergood.
Okay. No,
we work with the engineering department to develop this concept layout to what it is. And what we're thinking is we're gonna lower that top end and actually bring it out down on the bottom end. So there is gonna be some grading. I wouldn't call it, it might be a little heavy grading on the upper end to make the bottom end work out. So what we come up with was a tiered kind of process for that lot to make it work. And when you come in off Simmons, it will go down into the parking lot. So all that'll be lowered. Also, with the buffer and the trees, lowering that lot, it's gonna leave, you're not gonna see as much from Hams, is what we're anticipating. Again, this is a concept, and we haven't worked with an architect or an engineer yet. When we started pursuing this property, we worked with Mike's crew in our engineering department and kind of put this together, what would work best with that piece of land. And one thing, and I will point out, I know everybody said solid waste and the smell and all that, but if you look at this plan or this concept, and everything we've put is moved away from the residence. So our winter operations, it's moved away from it. You've got a 40-foot buffer here, and then you've got this row of trees here, then you've got a chain link fence that goes all the way around it with privacy slats in it. But we've moved most of our louder operations, like Randy had said. The only time we work 24 hours a day is in snow removal. Once the initial shift chain goes in and out there, it's not that loud, really. Once I get all the trucks back out on route, they come in individually. So you'll hear one truck in or two trucks in at a time, and you'll hear a loader a little bit during the night, loading that, but it's not a consistent noise all night long. We do have to respond on call, so we will be in and out of that depending on the situation, whether it be a hurricane responding to that, trees down or whatever, but it's nothing that the whole facility will come in. You will have a crew. We have 5 crews. It's slotted for different operations. Some have to come there to get their equipment, and some respond just from their home. But we will access it sometimes. It'll be occasionally with the on-call. But everything we've done is moved everything farther away from the residential side of it, taking in consideration noise and all. With the fleet shop and the wash bay, all that's over. Again, we only work on our own stuff. We only are there during normal operating hours, except in snow. I have a 24-hour mechanic in snow. There'll be a house there. But this is just admin. This is admin parking. This is crew parking with a thoroughfare down through there. And the workshops here are mainly storage workshops. And like my traffic operations will have 2 of those. That's all inside, creating signs, working on signal cabinets and stuff like that. Nothing that's going to generate, you're going to hear air guns or anything like that. It'll be an enclosure. The other crews will have space there to put their tooling, the stuff that, because we do have a lot of tooling. But we've tried to take that in consideration. We put the truck shed way over here against Simmons Road to limit some of that noise. We think about light pollution and all that. But again, this is just the concept. I can assure you when we go into that process with architect or something, we're going to look for the most efficient light system that will not shine out and pollute other properties and all that. There's a lot of stuff out there now. Can I tell you what that is now? No. But what I'm looking for is to get this rezoned, use this concept, and bring an architect and an engineering firm on board and show them what we come up with and see what their suggestions are. And they can have a lot more suggestions than we have right now to make the space more adequate, lighting, sound, everything. So I know that everyone said about the solid waste, and I know our policy is to tip them every evening. There is an occasion or two that if they have a mechanical failure, we will tow them back in, but they will stay inside that fleet building. They are housed in this building. So right now, I don't have any complaints from the neighbor I have across the street, and they park right there in front of his house pretty much. It's across the creek, across the railroad. We do, like I said, we do have occasions when they have broke down and we pulled them back in, but we have that inside. I get those complaints from my mechanics. But as soon as they're up and running, we go empty them. I'm getting a whole new fleet of those trucks too in the next year and a half. And part of the regiment we have now with our drivers is they are washed once a week and cleaned. So we do take the steps to try to take care of our equipment and think of our neighbors, and not only our neighbors, our staff too, because it's not a pleasant place to work if you smell that all day.
If I understand you right, there's a 40-foot barrier then from that tree line to where the fence will be? 40-foot space?
There's a 40-foot buffer right here.
Yeah.
It goes all the way around it.
Yeah.
Is that accidental where that parking is in the 40-foot?
Where's the park? Right here? It's allowable by code, right, Randy? On this side. As far as the setback.
Thomas, the fence is in blue, I'm sure.
Yeah, the fence is in blue.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we're gonna hold your comments right now, because right now we're having our discussion points.
Okay.
And if we don't cover some of the issues, I'll come back to you, okay? Okay. All right, so commissioners, this is your chance to ask questions, and I'm gonna jump in there right now on just the water issues. There's been many, items stated today, like a drainage ditch, flooding, your property that had water coming across, we had a well that concerns of, being contaminated. And I guess what I'm looking for, and looking to the town's engineering department to say, what's being done to help correct all these issues? And is that something that we can correct by putting this facility in here and addressing all the water issues that the townspeople are having today, including the pump station that appears to be rather old and outdated? So I guess that's my question to staff, really, and Mike, if you want to address some of those.
So regarding the well issue, it's the first I've heard that there's a well adjacent to it. So number one, where is the well in proximity here? The other thing is, I believe on Haynes Street, that is still up gradient, and as Mr. Lansanese had described, that if we're cutting the property down and taking some of it down on the top, it's probably going to shift the gradient for that just a little bit, and it's any contamination potential that might be there. You know, the town's going to do everything within current regulations by DEQ and the AWWA Clean Water Act, but anything like that, shouldn't change. If we cut the property down and there's a well there, the water gradient's not going to go back up the hill if we're lowering the property. So I think that there's probably a very, very low possibility of anything happening with the well. So, but we'll look into that. You know, I'm speculating. I don't know the location of the well or anything like that. That's pure speculation at this point. The stormwater issue, we did go out there and take a look at that, and the channel and everything upstream that the gentleman is complaining about is on private property. The town does not have jurisdiction over that channel. So there really was not much that we could do to address the drainage in that area. Now, there could be the possibility with the area that's shown as a stormwater feature right here. You know, maybe there is a possibility of taking that into the stormwater onto this property and addressing that as we go forward. There's a possibility. We'd have to engage the architect or the engineer in the future to make that determination. The other thing I want to point out is the area that he's describing is in the 500-year floodplain as identified on the firm panels. Now, that's not a regulated floodplain. The 100 years is the regulated floodplain. But that area does have a history of being low. It's not a new condition on that property because it is designated as the 500-year floodplain. So I hope I've addressed your questions.
Yep, that helps.
Okay.
What about the pump station? Can you answer about the pump station
The pump
concerns?
station, Mr. Lansing may know more about the pump station than I do, but it's my understanding that pump station was built in the late 70s. And as far as I know, throughout the years it's been maintained. It's nearing its life expectancy. You know, we're always rebuilding things and working on things. But as far as I know, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have any issues with that pump station, correct?
Like Mike said, we've done a PER on all of our stations, and are in the process of looking at each one of them individually, and then designing and upgrading each one of them individually.
What would be the impact to the pump station from this project?
Actually, we've talked about sewer just conceptually. With this type of facility has a lower impact on sewer. It doesn't generate as much as like a subdivision or a residential neighborhood would. And we've actually talked about putting a small lift station on the parcel itself and running a small force main up Simmons to a receiving manhole. And I believe that receiving manhole, Jim, does not go back to the Teal station.
That's correct.
Yeah, so if we build that pump station and take it to that manhole, it wouldn't even drain to that station.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, they were talking about some washing of trucks. There'd be a lot of runoff water. Would that be impacting the pump station at all, or?
It won't impact the filter.
Okay.
We currently do that now. We have all the interceptors in place to clean that water. It's all captured inside the facility itself, goes to the interceptor, and then goes into the sewer system.
Got it. Okay.
So the pump station in question is a sanitary sewer, not a stormwater.
It is a sanitary sewer. We do not have storm pump stations.
And the wash bay drains would be, those are sanitary sewer also, not stormwater?
That is correct.
Thank you.
My question is about paving. It was mentioned of paving the property. So is that pretty large scale? Most of that will be paved or concreted?
I believe I-2, and Randy or Retta, correct me if I'm wrong, it has a ratio of 80-20. 80% could be paved, 20% impervious. But any of that paving, it could be paved up to that percentage. But as I mentioned before, compliance with the DEQ stormwater regulations, you have to attenuate those storm events to where whatever you do on the site is you're discharging less than or equal to what is there previously. So
would some of that paving would actually, if we put proper drainage in, would actually help that neighborhood where they're?
part of it could. The part the gentleman was talking about, the piece moving off to the side and going and not having an area to drain, that would be incorporated and redirected into that stormwater pond conceptually at this point. You know, that's yet to be determined, but you know, that would be everything would drain off that site and into and through that stormwater pond.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I think we also mentioned, this property won't always remain agricultural, and there is a housing need for sure. And that also brings in the situation with the grading that could take place in the storm drainage pond. So either way you go with this, you could end up with hopefully an improvement to the property, whether it's industrial or whether it goes to residential. But there would be some grading that would be required, and again, some engineering that would be required to put any kind of residential there, just to make sure that's stated clearly.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my thoughts, is the concerns that were raised regarding construction, water flow, increased traffic, losing nature. I mean, the reality is, those are going to be issues if it turns residential. So regardless of what goes there, if that property is sold and switched, as many of y'all are saying, to what the comprehensive plan says, you're going to have those. So I think that's just something to consider. I think we heard those concerns. But if that turns from agriculture, you're gonna have that no matter what. So whether it's this project or another project, those are gonna be some pieces that are there. Now, there will be different, imagine if we were talking about housing right now, there'd be different concerns that folks would be raising. But some of that we'd still be talking about, like, where's traffic gonna flow, signals, things like that. I think that the nature, I think, is beautiful, but where it's located, I just don't think, for those of you who are hoping that that will stay, I just don't think you're gonna get that. I don't think it will stay, for much longer. I was curious, one of the questions, town staff, if you could answer, that folks brought up, if you could just elaborate on what other sites were considered. I think that was a good question that a town resident brought up that might just be helpful for citizens to hear, on what y'all considered as other options.
We have discussed other sites, although to be honest, we've discussed those with town council in closed session. So in case this isn't rezoned, I'd rather not, discuss the properties that we're considering right now.
Okay, that, I can respect that. Can you share a little bit about, there are some questions about the scattergood, and you sort of addressed them when you initially presented, but if you could answer the question about that maybe there are some parts of the scattergood acres that are not really being fully utilized, if you could elaborate on the reason for that.
There's about 3.5 acres, I guess, that's kind of set above the existing complex that we bought maybe 10, 12 years ago. It's used, right now there's some brick dust storage on it. I guess part of the problem with that is that the property is so tiered. If you look at it, the elevation change is pretty bad. Right now you've got, I guess, about 3 levels to the property, and up where the brick dust is probably about the 4th level. Like I say, the lower portion is in the 100-year floodplain and does flood. The upper portion does not flood, but it's, like I say, just kind of necessarily separated by topography, so much so that it's prohibitive, I think, to be graded. Just it's such a severe topographic issue there.
Thank you.
How many trucks will be parked there? How many pieces of
Thank
equipment?
you, Mark. That was on my list.
Number of trucks?
Heavy
and
trucks or?
Just in general, like, some equipment, trucks?
Hopefully over 300 pieces. Heavy truck. Can you hear me? We have, roughly, there's 25 heavy trucks, which are dump trucks, low boys, trailers, stuff like that. There's probably 60 or 80 service trucks and pickups that'll be stored there, and then various types of other equipment with it.
Most are parked outside? Most are
Currently?
Yeah, so on the left there was
So,
the trucks?
all the heavy trucks, all the dump trucks will be parked in. All the heavy trucks will be parked here. That's a sweeper and, back truck, they have to be heated, keep them through the winter. So those two will be parked in a bay there, along with a couple other items that, cannot freeze. So they will be heated bays. This is basically a shed though. There is no doors on the front. It'll be deep enough to where it holds all their equipment that goes with each truck, which is a plow and a spreader, and everything will function right out of there. The supervisory trucks and the admin vehicles, the pickups and stuff will be housed here on a daily basis. And then the crew trucks will be housed under this awning here. The only other vehicles that's gonna be in, our heavier equipment will be in an open bay here. And then, like I said earlier, our solid waste vehicles will be in this area right here, which is a building with, cart storage on the back is what we're thinking. And then they will back in here. It will not, it could be closed, it may not, be enclosed on the front. Again, those are just ideas that we're throwing and don't really know right now exactly the best course to do with that. But that should, we probably have, I'm trying to think, cause I got them in 3 different sites right now. A lot of our equipment, we have over 300 pieces. All the main equipment are currently at Scattergood is the heavy trucks, the backhoes, the loaders, and all that. All of our supporting equipment, like leaf machines and all that, it's housed at different places currently. It's housed at Wade's Lane, it's housed at the Old Grove Furniture Building on Cambria. That's one of the goals for having this facility have everything there, because it will help our response time too. Because right now, depending whether it's housed at Wade's Lane or it's housed at Cambria, you have to report to Scattergood, and you either have to go to one of those places if it's got the equipment that you need. But as far as heavy equipment, we have about 20, 25 pieces that will be housed in here. The only thing that won't be under a shed is our load boy, and it'll park right here. Is what our thought is with this concept, because we have a 53-foot load boy that we have to put on the site too. But we did, in consideration, you know, all of our employees and our admin staff are going to enter this way, but all of our heavy truck traffic is going to be on down Simmons Road to kind of break that up and have two entrances, so we don't have a mix of smaller vehicles with larger vehicles and all that.
I do appreciate in your plan that it looks like there really is no way for heavy traffic to get in. I mean, it looks like it's pretty clearly distinct, the two different entrances, which I do appreciate. The concept plan goes with what you're saying, it was the intent for the two entrances.
And I guess staff, has VDOT done any kind of study on traffic on this property?
I'm not aware of any.
Anyone? Not yet?
No, I'm not aware of any.
So, and I think, Randy, you had mentioned a couple lights.
That's long-term.
Okay.
Basically, long-term planning, if you look at that corridor between the bypass and I-81 on Runnock Street, the signal at, the connection at Houchins Road would be too close to the interstate interchange.
Sure.
The interchange down by, I guess, see, there's that electric, would be too, or Hubble would be too close to the other interchange for a signal. So that would only really leave 3 streets in there. Either an industrial drive, I think, certainly makes sense to eventually signalize. The other 2 would either be Teal or Simmons. And the fact that Simmons aligns with the other Simmons Road, and just the fact that I just think it makes more sense that it's in between the other 2, that it would probably be the other signal location. But again, that's, I think, just kind of long-term planning. There is no immediate plan for a signal there, though. And I don't want to give anybody the impression that there is.
Got it. Good.
What would cause for you to have to do a traffic count?
The traffic volume generated on the site, basically with rezoning request or conditional use permit request or subdivision plats, the town requires a traffic impact study when there is a certain amount of traffic generated per VDOT traffic generation tables that they use in basically these traffic generation manuals. And based on the land use and the area, things like that, you calculate how much traffic is generated, and we do not kick the threshold for that study. It's different whether it's commercial or residential use, but we don't kick it in.
I know that on Roanoke Street, when was it Hubble lets out about that 4 o'clock, 4:30 time frame, and you guys are going to get out around that same time, right? Your shift ends around 4 or so for the town. I know coming from Scattergood, I know what it looks like on Franklin Street every day. And that's a lot of traffic coming out on Roanoke Street, because not everybody's going to come out and take a right. You know, they're going to want to cross the street, and that's kind of a scary spot. So I was just curious.
And while we're on the roads, we're talking about 25 heavy trucks. Are the roads adequate to handle those heavy trucks? So is that something that we need to take a look at?
Simmons Road, I believe, right now probably could handle the traffic, like I say, it's basically a straight shot down from this property down to Rennick Street on Simmons. We are gonna dedicate 10 feet of right-of-way on that side for future street widening. You know, if there is a need for street widening with the development of the complex, we would do that. Right now, we don't plan to develop this site just overnight either. This is, I'd say probably over the next 4 or 5 years, we would develop it. The purchase agreement calls for the Dove family can remain on the property for up to a year. And of course, we do plan on honoring that with the purchase agreement. So it is the type of thing, I think it's gonna be, like I said, kind of a little bit of a land banking situation for a few years for us until we can develop it.
Yeah, I'm no expert on roads, but I know what heavy trucks can do to some roads, and if it's constant, then it could be a problem. So,
Like I say, if there are upgrades needed, we'd be willing to make them. If we have to use heavy duty asphalt between that section of Simmons Road, that'll work too.
Okay, thank you, Randy.
Can you put the map up? Please. So can we see where it hits Roanoke Street? Not quite there, okay. There. So I'm just curious, so from the land, from where this property starts down to Roanoke Street, do we know how wide that road is compared to having larger trucks on the property? If I'm gonna pass it on my vehicle, am I gonna be safe to pass it without going off the shoulder?
Simmons Road, at least adjoining us, is 30 feet of right-of-way.
Okay.
Like I say, and we're dedicating 10 feet of right-of-way.
Right, but all the way down to Roanoke Street?
I'm not sure. We can take a look. We'll
I
take a
drove
look
down
at
there
that.
today, I was trying to think about if I would feel comfortable enough to try it.
Right. I mean, I know this is all, the schematics aren't right, but if I look at Hubble and Fisher, those are wider streets. At least from what I see there, right? Like, it looks like it's just a wider space for vehicles.
I don't know how wide that street is, but I can tell you, I drove my dually down there with a truck coming from Hubble, a semi, and we passed each other without any problem.
On Hubble, or did you do that on?
No, we did that on Simmons. Yes.
Okay. Well, nobody else wants to talk about it, but I don't think it's a great use for industrial. I think I can see it for being townhomes, single-family homes, something of that nature, but I think we're gonna affect the value of everybody that does live on that street. I think that the DeVore land is gonna get developed into something that's gonna be residential. I think this is a mistake if we put industrial here. I'm sorry, I like you guys a lot, but I don't know that that's the best use, in my opinion.
I think you're
we're
gonna
hurt
have
a lot
less of,
homeowners.
I think you're gonna have less of a problem with water runnage and everything else, the way they're talking about improving the land than if you had homes in there, in
Maybe so,
residential.
but you would have lived next to a snow truck in January and have
You're
neighbors
not
around?
living next door to it, you're living on a different street.
Yeah, it surrounds
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
It's surrounded on two sides.
Yeah, I know that was a concern, and I know it is, only at winter time, but, when we have a big snow, I know you guys work really hard. And those trucks are moving big time and getting the salt on the streets, and you do a great job. And, if we get a big snow, that's gonna be a lot of noise in that area, for those residents. But again, it is limited to a certain season of the year. And if we go from the past 3 years, we certainly haven't had that big of a winter, so.
No, but you have storm season. We just had a nice flood. There's other seasons, not just January.
I mean, I will say, anytime that someone comes before us that wants to do a rezoning, I do always look at what the future land use map says. And I heard your request that you want us to consider as we're doing the comprehensive plan to consider that, but the reality is we haven't considered it. We have not stopped and thought about until now, if something else would make sense there. Right now, the future land use map does say residential, and I do understand it does butt up against industrial on the other side as well. and business around. But that's not what it was designated for, this area. I don't know that adding more industrial and surrounding those homes, those residential homes with more industrial, is the right answer. I do have a lot of hesitations about putting in this property there. I think that y'all put a lot of thought into it. But I do think if it was someone else coming before us, we probably would be pretty critical about putting industrial in that residential. I mean, I think given that it's the town coming before us, you know, I put a lot of weight in y'all's thought and in the research that you do and the closed door sessions, and so this, you know, I put a lot of trust that this is the best option that you all came up with. But I agree, I do not know that that is the best place to turn into industrial. I think I would love to see what some other options are, if there's any way that Planning Commission could support looking at other places. But just to be honest, based on what the future land use map says, and then also if that was my backyard, I can't say that I'd be excited about that. And I do think that we need to take into consideration what the resident says. Now, just residents, so you know, a lot of Planning Commission, what we're looking at more is what the comprehensive plan says. So your questions, your concerns are very helpful for us to consider different stipulations if we make a recommendation to put in. But ultimately, we are looking at what does the comprehensive plan, future land use, what does zoning say? Town council is more about the residents' concerns, right? So we make a recommendation to town council based on what we think makes the most sense based on the documentation information that we have before us, taking into consideration some of what you're saying. So I do think it's important to make sure that citizens know the difference between planning commission and town council's role.
And you hit on one thing that I was gonna mention too. There are other options. We don't know what they are. You said there was a closed session meeting, and so if there were no options whatsoever, and this was a must situation that we had to bring everything together on one property, it makes sense to do it on one property. I'm not sure if it makes sense to do it on this property.
I guess to answer your question about would I want to have that in my backyard, when we bought the house we live on now, there was an animal transfer station right across the street from us. So you don't always have a choice. We had a choice. We didn't have to buy the house, but we bought it. It is not any longer an animal transfer station now, but it's still an eyesore. I'd like to see them take it down. Unfortunately, I can't afford to buy that property. It's not for sale anyhow. But I think this overall project that they're talking about will enhance the area and will help with the problem they have now with the drainage on Teal Street. And I also believe that it's a good use for the town to have a site on this side of town that is close to 460, and they'll be able to get from one end of town to the other a lot quicker. I think there's been enough mention that if you have a housing project there, and there was one turned down a few years back, but if you have a housing project there, you're going to have more of a problem with the water, because they're not going to level it. They're like what they're talking about doing. So I am in favor of seeing this get put through.
Well, my main issue is, I mean, the homeowners, renters, I mean, they weren't expecting to have a sanitation, facility in their backyard. I do think that the stormwater I think it'll improve whether you put this facility here or a residential area, a residential, like a complex or something there, but I'm stuck on the idea of having it on this part of Christiansburg. I don't know. I think that's more, it needs to be more closer to an industrial setting, somewhere not near residential. Just makes more sense to me.
Well,
I see this working,
all
but
around there. You've got Hubble there, you've got Sheeler's there, you've got,
I understand that part, but you also have the residents on the other side. Conceptually, it looks fine. For me, I would like to see, for me to even think about it, I would have to see full engineering plan to see what their thoughts are and how they're gonna make everything work. I mean, on paper, everything looks good, but I would like to see more information for me to be comfortable with this site here at this parcel, so.
I will say, I do think it's possible that you could have some apartments there. And so the visually what you see from what is on this plan might be visually more appealing than potentially what could go there in the future, just so residents know if it does go residential, it could be big, towering buildings that you're looking at. So I do think that that is a consideration for a planning commission and also for residents to know that that is, and again, that's not what's before us, but if it's recommended against this, that property is up and that's what you could be looking at instead.
I mean, you have townhouses, it's possible, and we will look at the setbacks, we'll look at what makes sense, what falls within the plan, but I just don't like this idea here. That's just my personal.
I think that usually we often see plans have already been through engineering. And so
Right.
we can, a lot of the questions and concerns that we have are usually able to be very quickly and easily
Right.
answered or answered within a week or two of the next meeting. So I do think there's some of that information that's not here that we would typically have.
Right.
That we can get clarification on.
So on that point, that's one item I hear, that a full engineering plan would be helpful for us to
Yes.
be able to look through. Is there anything else that we would require, to help, answer some of the further questions that we may have?
I mean, I'd be honest, I hear the concerns about the water and the pollution. I think I would want to see actual, potential research or literature about the impact of a project like this on the land, on the water, and on the air around. I mean, I would want to see that just so that way residents could know that going ahead. I think I would like to know where the well is. I think it'd be interesting to know helpful. Where is the well? Where's the runoff going from this project? Is there an impact?
And the land, I mean, it will be developed. It's just a matter of what. And, I mean, could it work here? Yes, but it's not something that I would like to see in this piece of property.
So before I engage in discussion, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3112, Section B1, and 2.2-3115, Section H, I'm declaring that I'm a member of one of three or more businesses that may be affected by the agenda items 4A and 4B. As an owner of an electrical and electronic security contractor, I am able to participate in the discussion and voting on this matter fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. Having said that, couple things. I do think that it is important to note that, as other commissioners have, that we've got industrial on both sides and B3 around. Also, I'll say I'll commend the town for their concept plan and say they've obviously taken a lot of care into respecting their neighbors. There's some by right things that could be done if this was rezoned to, an R3 or an R2. That they would not have to take those neighbor concerns into consideration. And so I'll commend the town on that. As on a personal note, I have the town as my neighbor, and the town has been a great neighbor. Now, it's not Public Works necessarily, but I have had zero problems in the 17 years I've lived here with the town as my neighbor. So they've been a good neighbor to me personally. And I also want to stress too, that this is not just this is Public Works altogether. It's not just trash. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Are we going to request this information then? And
Well, I'm getting the impression from the commissioners that we're not quite there yet to take an action tonight. And I think there's issues that have been brought up, whether it's the water runoff, whether it's the well, whether it's the heavy trucks on the street, can they traffic studies, does that impact it? Just maybe a little bit more to look into, rather than taking action tonight. Is that the impression? Is that correct, that I'm receiving the correct impression from you guys?
One of the concerns that the first person who talked about property values.
That was
and I
my
don't know if
concern.
that's measurable or not, but that is certainly a concern, whether it would really directly impact lower their housing values or not.
And I think it has to do with more like how well will this property be, will this facility be hidden?
Yeah, what's the appeal of how
Yeah,
the
was,
aesthetics of it.
you're right. I mean, it could be something that might not
Look
affect
really
it.
good.
Does it look,
It's covered, other buildings,
right,
the trucks will be covered, so it's gonna be an eyesore or a beautiful piece of property.
Right.
And I think we hear that anytime we see people come in and want to put townhomes or multifamily or apartments, the neighbors always have a concern about property value. So I mean, I think anytime people come before us, it's always property value. Mhm.
but with this being a new, it's not gonna be something, part of my language with crappy, that's not gonna be put up on this piece of property. It's gonna be something somewhat appealing, but I'll just need to see more. I just need to see more.
And Felix, oftentimes we see like a visual, we see
Right.
images of what the property looks like, we see, like renderings
Right.
of like the buildings, and so maybe if it's possible to see any kind of renderings, of what some of this would look like, I think could potentially also be helpful visually.
And this certainly has nothing to do with the town, but the bus garage at the old middle school. I think some of the assurances we had about how that was gonna look, I think we would follow through for it. It's not very appealing to look at at all.
Right.
May I interject one thing? It's one thing to have a dealership that has a nice view as opposed to something like this. I feel it makes it, having a neighbor, as far as a home place, that's entirely different.
Yeah, I do like the comments that were made about the aesthetics to the property. I mean, there isn't going to be a fence, there is gonna be, evergreens all around it.
It's a large buffer.
Very
Yes.
The grading is going to come down, should help the water situation. And then, also the trucks are well hidden. So hopefully the aesthetics of the property would be improved.
Right.
But I think it's wise for us. Let's get some renderings, let's get some studies done. And, I think this goes to town council on November 12th. So, we'll hear a little bit more from the public then. Maybe I encourage maybe the commissioners to attend that meeting as well and learn a little bit more. So at this point in time, do I have an understanding that we should push our action to our next meeting, which will be Monday, November 18th, correct?
Yes.
I don't need a motion to do that, do I?
No,
Okay.
it's already scheduled.
Just check.
And I think you made a good point too, for the residents, that the, town council public hearing will happen prior to the planning commission making its recommendation. So, as the chairman said, we will meet and make a decision on Monday, November 18th. But town council will hear the public hearing, so just as you had an opportunity tonight to come and raise your concerns, the applicant, which is the town, will be able to present, the application to town council and have y'all raise your concerns or support, whatever you might want to share, on Tuesday, November 12th. So just know that will happen before we make our decision.
Fantastic.
Just one thing, gentleman on the end said something about this would, he might be in favor for this because it would help the flooding in. On the end there, well, I'd hate for y'all to think, well, let's vote on this because it's gonna help the flooding. Any development you're gonna do here is gonna be held to the same standards as far as your stormwater and erosion control. So if you put a development in there, if it's housing, you're still gonna have a retention for that water, which is gonna help that area down there. This industrial site's
And that's one of the questions that I think, just about everybody here asks, and we get answers on before we even vote on it.
My other question, you've been waiting, well, I heard about retention pond, okay, it fills up, what happens when the next rain comes through? Does it go to that ditch line again, which I heard them say, Ham doesn't own that belongs to private property. That's running through my property. How are you gonna manage that?
I believe when we usually in the past have gotten, schematics, engineers been able to tell us where that water goes to.
Yeah.
So in the past, we've been able to know where does the water drain to, does it sit, how does it dissipate? So I think those are questions in the past.
Got a long way to get there, which I would propose that across Steel Street, and going across the property across from me, just like straight over, that'd be a big relief right there.
Well, maybe we'll know a little bit more when, public hearing is with the town council. Okay? Nope, no problem. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing section and move to other business. And I do appreciate you all coming out tonight. You're welcome to stay, but our other business is pretty boring.
Can I share one other business that's relevant to what was shared tonight? We've talked about it a lot, and we've heard lots of concerns from renters or local residents not being informed, that the owners are informed. And we've kind of chatted about it, but if we could put it on a future agenda to actually talk about where is that in policy that only owners are notified, not local residents. And then if we can have a conversation about what, if anything, can we do to change that? I drove down there and I saw where the signs were. My first thought was, if I wasn't driving down Simmons, I wouldn't know that that existed. And I understand why it's placed there, but I do think that we've heard that from many other, in many other public hearings. So I would like, as a planning commission, to at least be able to see where we have that in writing, and if there's any recommendations we can make about possibly expanding notification. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll move on to other business. Again, you're welcome to leave or stay. Yeah.
These together.
Yeah.
You need these?
No. Okay, the other business I have is, I happen to be on the I-81 committee, and I received some project updates that I told you I would share with you. There's I-81 corridor improvements. This is the Salem district, and it talks about the widening of the 3 lanes between exit 143 and 150, 128 and 137, and of course the recently approved 116 to 128, which just got approved by Governor Youngkin for the funding to do both lanes, northbound and southbound. So I'm not going to go through this whole document and read it for you guys. Take it home. It gives you a nice update, and then we have another meeting this month with the I-81 committee, and I will be attending that as well, and I'll give you a further update.
I already love it because I drive every day and I get off at exit 150. So I see the construction.
Yep.
I see it all. I mean, it's going to be a big improvement, put it like that.
Yep.
It will.
Yep. It's just going to take time.
Where it says construction in the year, is that the year of completion, expected completion date? Because it says like construction fall 2025. It doesn't say completed, but it's like happening.
Let's see. Which one was that?
So all of them, they just say construction in
Oh,
a
yeah.
year. Is that completion or that's beginning?
I think you have to look at the colors, because one is planned improvements, one's under construction, and I think it's just the start of construction.
I think it is too, because I know the 143 to 150 just got awarded.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still too,
Okay.
yeah.
And the funding just for,
That should be done in a year.
I mean, I'd be impressed. I would love it. Okay.
and the funding for 116 and 128 just got approved.
Okay. Thank you.
So, that's all I had.
It's exciting, thank you.
Anyone else?
I meant to say it before everyone left, but please vote tomorrow. If you have not voted, please vote. Tomorrow is election day. Do your civic duty.
Staff, anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, then at this point, meeting adjourned.
I already voted, I wrote my own name in.